This episode is brought to you by Podmatch, the easiest way to connect podcast guests and hosts. We use it to find aligned voices for the ASQ Podcast, and it's how others have found us. Whether you want to share your story or grow your show, Podmatch makes it simple. Scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to join. You're listening to the ASQ Podcast for a transformational approach to life and leadership, blending soul wisdom with modern insight to create outer impact.
Ken, thank you so much for taking your time and being here with us today at the ASQ Podcast. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks.
It's a pleasure to have you. I've been looking over your bio, and we came across your stuff for a little bit, and we really were so interested in hearing your story, all of it. But it's customary in our podcast to ask this one question: where were you pitched? Tell us about your where were you born, your background, and tell us about that early stage of your life.
Okay, well, I had a difficult childhood. I was born February the 18th, 1969 in Collingdale, Pennsylvania. My mother and father were only married a short time, and they were separated before I was born. They weren't divorced before I was born. They were separated before I was born, but they divorced soon afterwards and never had any relationship with my father until I was 22. There were some brief letters in my late teens and stuff, and even after that, to this day, I don't have a relationship with him. He initially accepted me, then he rejected me. But so, born in Collingdale, Pennsylvania, which is outside of South Philadelphia, and mostly raised by my grandparents. My mother was married a total of 5 times. And so I did some moving around as a kid back to my grandparents. It was rather hard. And I guess one thing that really stood out is really my grandmother was a strong factor in my life, both my grandparents, but especially my grandmother. The public school system, I don't feel was very good in the area we grew up in. I remember them telling my grandmother I was in the 2nd grade. I remember them telling her, we're sorry, but your grandson is mildly retarded, and he will never learn how to read. So not only did I go to summer school, my grandmother bought a bunch of books and sat down with me for hours. And when I went back the following year, I was reading in the 3rd grade, I was reading at a 5th grade level. So not only did I learn how to read, but I actually, and my degree's in English literature. Now I'm a writer. I've read hundreds of books. But I remember my grandmother being very angry out in the kitchen smoking, because she did smoke, and words coming out of her mouth I'd never heard come out before about these teachers. It just wasn't a good set. They didn't have, I think I'm on the spectrum for autism, actually. I'm going to get tested by the VA. I'm not Rain Man, but I do have trouble with relationships. I have trouble connecting with people. I think of things in a different way. I process things different than most people. I'm a slow learner because I want to understand everything about a situation. And some people interpret that as stupid. Really, it's not stupid.
No.
And I have a different type of a memory. I'm in Peru right now. Miraflores district of Lima, Peru is where I retired to. And I walk to Spanish class every day.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
It's a simple walk. Only have to make 1, 2, 3 turns. And for like almost 2 months, I had difficulty with it. I would use Google Maps, and this was a very simple thing. So with names, with directions, I have a great deal of difficulty, but I can remember very minute facts about things.
How's that, if you don't mind me asking, and again, because the beauty of life, it's in the diversity of it all, right? And again, all my life, I've worked with young people, and it bothers me when an adult tells something like that towards a kid, because it diminishes who they are. But tell me about that extra power of seeing the details in things. How do you describe something when you're so attuned to the details of it all? Because that's a beautiful thing to look at.
I mean, I don't know. I know it annoys a lot of people because I don't. The difficult thing is when you are different than other people, you don't know that. You think, well, everybody's like that. And simple directions for other people give me problems. Remember, I'm sitting there talking to my friends and I forget their name and they're like a good friend. And I'm just like that. Only thing I can think is my mind decides it's not very important. But remembering my new details, I get into dating a Peruvian girl and get into something that happened to her over a year ago, texts that were sent. And she says, Ken, people just don't have a memory like you. I mean, because I think everybody can just recall these things like this. I'm not saying it's the best, but I think it's better than most for some.
And it's unique. I mean, it's a very unique.
It's a unique memory. And I did several careers in the Army. The last one was an analyst, and I think I was a good analyst because I just had the mindset for it. Just the facts. I know that how people, I retired as a lieutenant colonel, and people perceive me as being unapproachable, friendly, aloof. And one person who worked with a 3-letter agency came and sat down with me once and said, you need to listen to some books on emotional and social intelligence. And I started doing that because he saw through that. He said, no, he's a nice guy. He just, I would go to a meeting and I will not say good morning, everybody. I will not ask about anybody's kids. I will not say happy birthday. I sit there, I start the meeting and then I stop it. And I've learned to do better since this time, but to me, that's being efficient.
Yeah.
The people have the hour-and-a-half meetings and they're talking about nonsense. I guess they're building camaraderie then, but to me, they were annoying me.
Yes.
And I'm like, I have work to do. This guy's wasting my time.
Well, I think that most of America and the world would agree with you on that when it comes to meetings. Let's get to the point, So I do like that perspective because a meeting should take 20 minutes, not 2 hours.
Yeah, my meetings were not long.
Yeah. Going back to your childhood, you mentioned that at that time you didn't see your father. You lived with grandma, which was a big cornerstone in your life. Growing up, and not having a father around, how did that impact you?
Well, I had a grandfather for a good father figure.
Okay.
It did impact me, and I never really mentioned it to my mother. In fact, we had kind of a fight when I was 16. It said I was a very quiet child, but it did bother me, and other people would remark, well, don't you want to know who your father is, or do you have a father? And I'd feel like a sinking sensation in my stomach where I'm missing out on something. Now, the reality is, now that I found out about my father, I asked my mother, what attracted you to him? Well, he was really good looking and a good dancer. She wasn't in the USO, but she was part of an organization that would link people up. Cause I was born in 1969. So during the Vietnam War, when he was in the Navy and from Tennessee, she is from Pennsylvania. If you could picture the show outside Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, not the countryside, Green Acres, where there's like a farmer guy, then a girl from the city. Yeah. Not that she had money, but it's just, they just can't relate. You're talking like Presley, and Elvis Presley. And I have met him, but only once. And I might have been a blessing I did not grow up around it because I do know he had 3 other kids. He married again. And in Tennessee, at least at that time, if you had 3 DUIs, they put your picture in the newspaper. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it sure was hard on the kids seeing that because I was told the kids had to see their father like that. And I don't think there's such a thing as I'm no longer an alcoholic. I think it's just I'm recovered or I'm on the wagon or something like that. And so an alcoholic I don't know that my life would have been better with him in it, but people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very good point that you said, because I do a lot of work with young people and I hear about the absence of fathers, right? But sometimes it's probably a blessing not to have that and not having to go through that. I mean, I know that this sounds cold, but it might be better not to have certain things in situations like that,
I didn't understand it then. I'm 56 now, but I have had to eliminate people that I called friends from my life who weren't really friends. They were, in a business negotiation, we understand that If we're doing business with somebody else and we're not benefiting, then that doesn't work. But in relationships, we don't think that way, but it is that way.
Yeah.
And I've told my girlfriend this. I said, look, I know you're not a bad person. I'm not a bad person, but if we are not making our lives better, then the relationship, you need more than love for a relationship. You need to be realistic. Love is not enough. You need to be able to put up with, if I have all the financial responsibility, I have to be willing to accept that.
Yeah.
Or if it's something where like she is gonna, or I'm gonna control, how everything goes in this house, where everything's painted and everything like that. She has to be okay with that if I'm that way.
Yeah.
You have to make compromises. And I think if I had grown up with my father, I think that if he had acted right, but I mean, he didn't act right after I met him. So I don't think it would have been better.
Yeah.
I think it would have been better with an appropriate man. And I had an excellent example with my grandfather.
Awesome.
Right.
And how was your relationship with him?
It was extremely good. I mean, all kids wind up, to me, they were like, I consider them like my parents. My mother was more like a sister. She was sending money to them when I lived with them so that I could have a higher standard of living. It was very good with them. I didn't finish my statement. I think all kids at some point hate their parents or grandparents, whoever they live with. And that's just the thing you go with. And that's something where I look at, I'm a Christian, obviously, and I believe that God puts people in our lives. I think that, we are limited in what we know. I think back to when I was 3 or 4 years old, and I played in a little area in my grandmother's backyard. And I used to think, well, I wish, I had friends. Wish we could be brothers. We could see each other every day. And if we had grown up, we were all brothers, that would have been awful. So some of these people are in jail now. Some of them are dead. A lot of them are drug addicts. I mean, so no, it wouldn't have been better. They would have stole from me. They would have been constantly asking me for money. You have to eliminate people from your life that are like a cancer to you. And I think it's a pretty good tell that my father, when I did meet him, did not want to stay in touch with me, did not want his kids staying in touch, other kids staying in touch with me. It's a pretty good tell that it would not have been a beneficial thing.
At all, yeah. Are you the only child living with your grandparents right now, or are there other siblings or family members?
At that time. Okay, so I told you my mother was married 5 times. I lived with her. I mean, I lived with my grandparents. I guess I was about 2. My mother married for the second time.
Okay.
She married a man about 15 years older than her. I hope that's not too bad because my girlfriend is 18 years younger than me. That part's not really a problem. Again, a good-looking guy, a salesman, but also a pathological liar. Cheated on her a lot. She said she left him a bunch of times. I guess I was at my grandparents at the time. I only remember her leaving one time, and she didn't go back. Married him for like a couple of years, and then her third husband, she met at American Airlines where she worked at, and she started out reservations, went to gate agent, and then she was a ticket agent. And her third husband, he worked as fleet service, like they load up the planes before they go and take the luggage off and everything else. And they do other things too that I don't know about. And she was married to him, I guess, 9 years or a little bit less. And with that, he had 2 kids he was married once before. And he had 2 children, both boys, both older than me. And we moved from Colleyville, Pennsylvania. Well, I moved from Colleyville, Pennsylvania. My mother had purchased a house in, I can't remember the name of the town right now. It may come to me in Pennsylvania. And she was going to have me come live with her, but that didn't happen. And she was living with her third husband before she married him for about 11 months, and they were in that house. But then she sold that house. I don't know the reason why. She never told me, actually. And we moved to New Jersey, Mullica Hill, New Jersey, which is, I guess, was like about an hour away. And that was more of I grew up in the suburbs, a row home, no yard at my grandparents' house, just a wall between the houses, no money. But some people would argue that because my grandfather owned his house. He paid it off. So it wasn't like they were like, oh no, they're going to throw us out of here. No, they own the house. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they paid their taxes. And my grandparents, by the way, were not drinkers. My grandmother smoked heavily for a while, but that really wasn't so unusual for her.
At that time as well, it was something that happened culturally. It was
Yeah,
okay.
they would have like wine down in the basement that they would keep, and that was for the guests at Thanksgiving and stuff.
Yeah.
They never drank it. My grandmother had a terrible ulcer, and my grandfather didn't drink. So they didn't. So you asked who else was living there. My uncle, my grandparents had 3 children. My mother was the youngest. I had an uncle, and then she had an older sister, 3 years older than her. My uncle, 9 years older than her. My mother was born 46. So, I guess my aunt was born 43. I guess it would have been like 37 for my uncle, 1937. He lived with them for a while. He was kind of I don't know, I don't want to say strange, eccentric individual. He lived with my grandparents until he was about 45. He had been, he had a good job. He was in the Naval Reserves first in high school. And then joined the Air Force. He was Air Police, got out of the Air Police, came back to live with my grandparents, worked, I think, as a security guard somewhere. And then he actually got called for the highway patrol, but a better job, in his opinion, came along, which was the post office. And he worked at the post office till he was in his mid-60s. And he had an apartment not very far from my grandparents' house in Pennsylvania, but then he purchased a farm home in Maryland. And he would go there on the weekends. So he did. I guess I was in my teens when he moved out. He was like 43, 45 when he moved out. And that's when he got the apartment. But he just had a tiny little room upstairs, and he would live there. And he did drink, and he kept some beer there. I don't think my grandparents liked it a lot, but they put up with it. So it was a small house. It was 3-bedroom, but I can remember kind of growing up. There were times, I guess, my mom left her husband or something. I can remember sleeping in the same little room with her. And that same room that I was in is the room that she grew up in, but it was also the room that my Aunt Janice lived in. So they were sharing a room. And my uncle had a room that was kind of like he described it when he was a kid, like kind of like a closet. It wasn't big at all.
Yeah.
And this is Pennsylvania, not Texas. So it's not Texas, like, 1 story. It's
Yeah.
they had I guess you could say there were 3 stories, because there was a basement. And then there was the first story, and then the second floor, a nice house, fairly nice, I would say, not expensive by any means. It just 1 bathroom. I guess today they might call it a half bathroom, but it had a small bathtub in it. And I think that's what qualifies as a full bathroom, isn't it?
That's back in the days, yeah. Now it's
just 1 bathroom,
extravagant.
no dishwasher, because people didn't have those back then. Gas stove and things. So yeah, we moved to New Jersey, and I was in New Jersey for 3 years, and both my mother and my stepfather worked for American Airlines. So they would drive back, over the bridge in New Jersey and go to work at American Airlines. And in New Jersey, as we spoke to earlier in the show, if you want to talk to this, that is where I did suffer some sexual abuse from my stepbrother.
Okay. Would you mind expanding, like, a little bit on that? Because we talked the pre-show about it, and I do work with male survivors of sexual abuse as well. Could you expand on the effect that had on you at that moment, but also throughout your life? Like, how did that affect you?
Well, I was always, because I've been speaking to my cousin recently about this, my female cousin. She's a little bit, we're around the same age. And I was always kind of an awkward child, even before then. But I guess I was 9 years old the first time it happened. We were left alone for I guess about 30 days. After that period, I don't remember why I was left alone for 30 days. I don't mean to say that my mother and my stepfather didn't show up, didn't feed us or anything. I'm saying that After that time period, I would go to my grandparents like every single weekend.
Mhm.
And in the summer, I'd be there for like 3 weeks. And I remember like after the first 30 days being left alone, and his name was Marty Mayer. And he had a brother, Tommy Mayer, and being left behind. He was 4 years older than me. And he was watching television, and he sat there and he started, he was masturbating in front of me, in front of the television. And then he just slapped me and he said, "Hey, dude," then he told me what to do with my hand. And I was scared to death of him. He was
Mhm.
he was 3 times my size. And eventually I went and told my mother after this was happening. And I said, he's making, you know how little kids are. I said, he's making me play with this hot dog. He's doing this. And then she said, "Okay, well, don't you do that anymore." And it stopped. And the only thing I could think is, you know, his father was, I don't know if you'd say alcoholic, but he was a drinker, but he was not going to be okay with that. It stopped. I think he got hit.
Mm.
And then I was 9 at that time. And then when I was 11, I remember we were down in the basement watching television, because kids just don't process these things the same way.
Correct.
And we're watching television, and this house only had 2 stories and an attic. It had a basement and it had a first floor. And I knew that 7:00 was my bedtime. And I might have been 10 and a half, something like that, 10 or 11. And I started walking up the stairs, and Marty ran ahead of me, head of the stairs, and went like this. He said, "Kenny, where are you going?" You know, if somebody jumps ahead of you and says, "Hey, where are you going?" They're trying to
Yeah.
stop you from going there. And I said, "I'm going to bed. It's 7:00. And my stepfather's name was Howard. And I had heard him leaving, and he went to work. He worked at nights. And so I'm alone in there, because my mother, I don't know if she was at work and hadn't got home yet, or something. And he said, "It's 6:00. And I said, "No, it's 7. I heard Howard leaving," because I didn't have a watch. And I could see just the anger on his face, you know, that he had been caught in a lie. And so he said, "Well, watch television with me for half an hour." And so I went downstairs, and then we watched it for half an hour. He didn't do anything. And then after that half an hour, he came over and gave me a hug like you'd hug a bear.
Mm.
And then he tried to hug me like this. And I thought, man, what is going on? And then he started unbuckling my pants. And I said, "No, Marty, stop." And I was scared. I didn't hit him. I was scared. "Oh, stop, stop, stop." And he took his finger and went like this and lifted up my underwear. Look, I guess he thought I had a small male organ or something. He just started dying laughing. And I remember walking up the stairs, and I was embarrassed and looking down at him, and he was still laughing down there. So I didn't tell my mother about that, and I never discussed that about that, probably out of embarrassment. But I didn't forget it either. And I eventually wrote all this stuff down, and I was actually a lieutenant colonel in the Army, over 50, when I dealt with it. And I not only got in touch with him, I got in touch with his older brother, who, well, this may not be surprising to you. He was a little upset with me. "Why didn't you tell me about that so I could have protected you?"
Yeah.
Okay, so it's my fault again. And the older brother was trying to, he was trying to talk me through it. And my best friend is a minister. He was Marine Corps infantry for 4 years, and he was a chaplain in the Army. So he has a different outlook and other things than you would expect. And I was like, "I'm going to talk to my friend about this." And the older brother, was Tommy, said, "Yeah, talk to him about that." Well, I thought he was hoping the minister was going to say, "Let him go, don't talk, don't do anything." No, the minister said, "No, what about what he did to you?"
Correct.
And then I told Tommy, "I'm going to go forward. I'm going to go public with this." He said, "Well, how old were you?" He forgot my age. I was like, that made me more angry. I was like 10, or I was 9 or something like that. He said, "What were you, 14? I said, "What were you, 13? And I said, "No, Marty was 13. I was 9 years old." He said, you guys could have been like a couple," which that made me furious. Everything he said made me more angry. And then, so I told my mother about it. I contacted the police that were in the area where we grew up at, sent a picture of the house, a name, filed an official report with it. Previously, when I was actually in Kuwait, because I was working at the embassy in Baghdad, Iraq. And we were sent to Kuwait on ordered departure because they had killed Soleimani the previous year, who was a famous, you know about that famous figure.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And I was part of the Office of Security Cooperation in Iraq. And we dealt with selling things, Iraqi military equipment. But anyway, so I went there and I decided, well, how am I going to do this? I looked up the laws and everything about what harassment is. And I found that it's very hard for somebody to accuse you of harassment if you only do it one time. So I prepared this email and I went on Facebook. I went on every emails, Facebook, everything. And on Friday, when I assumed everybody be out with their family or drinking or doing anything but looking at the email or at their thing or at their Facebook, I sent out a broad thing and looked up members of his family on Facebook and just said all these things. And basically, when I was communicating with Marty through texts, he admitted to it. He said, my dad beat the shit out of me for that. And then he said, you aren't going to kill me, are you? I just remember he was sending me things. I just wasn't responding. And then I realized how powerful silence is. I wasn't saying anything and he was just freaking out. And I sent out this mass message and I got a reply from his sister, who's a half sister, who didn't believe me at first. She said, stay away from my family. But then when I sent the communications between Marty and I, where it was clear that he did not deny doing it.
All right.
He didn't deny it. He didn't say, you're crazy. I didn't do that. He said, well, I got beat up for that. Or he's like, I had to get my teeth. I had to go to the dentist to fix my cracked teeth. These aren't the words of someone who's protesting their innocence. That's someone who's saying, look what happened to me. And, so I sent that out and I'm a little bit out of order here. I did all that stuff. And it was when I returned from the embassy that I went out. I tracked down all the places that Marty Mayer had lived, and he moved quite a bit. I went around and printed out this information of all the text and everything else and put it on doorsteps at churches, in schools. There's a pedophile here, spoke to his neighbors who have been there. And I know somehow it got back to him because he left me a message and, said, don't do this, don't do that. And he was running scared.
Yeah.
How did it affect me? I'm not in a good way, I don't think.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, right, and I'm going to ask two questions on this particular topic before we move forward. Number one, you're in the military, a high rank in the military. Lieutenant colonel is a very serious rank with a lot of responsibilities, but it's also a culture, which is a culture that looks down upon this with shame. How are you able to handle that? Being open about when this happened so later on in your career, and what was the reaction that you got from the community when you came out and said this happened to me as a child?
Okay. Well, I didn't completely come out with it. I wasn't telling people in my unit.
Okay.
There were some people, friends that I have from the unit that worked with me that I told about this, but it wasn't a well-known thing. I don't think the majority knew it. I think the culture had changed a lot. When I came out talking about this would have been 2020, the end of 2020. And now we're in 2025. And by that time, things had changed a lot. I don't think I would have suffered any repercussions from that. The threats, the things of trying to shame me and everything else have come from Marty Mayer, who did it, or from his family trying to make me be quiet. And his older brother, at one point, was calling me, "Hey, I'm like consider you to be a brother. You're always welcome at my Thanksgiving dinner." He invited me to Thanksgiving when I was up in Pennsylvania once, and he asked me to leave him alone. And I said, "I think I made you angry." It was by text. "I think I made you angry because I didn't do what you couldn't control me."
Yeah.
And people want to control this. And my girlfriend, well-meaning, said I shouldn't tell very many people, but she's not understanding the fact that I can talk about it freely. That does take away people's power.
It does. And it also empowers others to be able to share their stories because, again, in this epidemic affects, from the statistics point of view, 1 out of 6 men And those are the ones that we know about,
I was going to ask you that because you told me that number ahead of time. Because reason I asked it the way I asked it, well, I think most men don't want to report it, so it might be higher than 1 out of 6.
It definitely is. It definitely
is. You said
it's
1 out of 3 women. It might be 1 out of 3 men too.
And more than likely it is. But again, it goes back to the reporting part, because these are things that we know that have been reported. And like you said, most things, most kids, they're threatened. If you say something, I'm going to get you. I'm going to hurt your mom. I'm going to hurt your family. So there's that level of threat, plus also the level of shame that goes with men. In that aspect. But I'm curious to say, well, you said you told a few of your in your battalion. What was their response when you told them?
They're very sympathetic. Everyone that I told was a Christian. It's my best friend, a friend I'd worked with previously that I was still in touch with. He made full colonel before he retired. He's retired now, and I made lieutenant colonel before him, but I didn't make full colonel. And he was very supportive of me. A few people that were in a Bible study with me at the embassy, but I didn't. I don't know. I kind of agree with my girlfriend. I don't think it's something I need to tell everybody the first time I meet them.
No, correct. Yes,
but it is something. I mean, I shared with you. You mentioned that you work with people that were survivors of sexual abuse, and I shared that with you. And we did not go into this show initially with the idea that you didn't know that. I'm not going to write on my thing.
No, but again, it's God, the universe works in mysterious ways, because again, you are a very accomplished person, for all intents and purposes in our society, and you are, and to be able to have the courage, to be able to share this, and our hope is really that men to listen to this, that this is a shame that they don't have to carry it anymore. At least that's our objective in what I do. Is that's a shame that you shouldn't carry.
Well, we
No
should not.
child.
They should not carry. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
no child should
there's
be made
another
to carry.
part to that. Because I had a stepbrother, Marty, and 2 years senior to him was Tommy. What Tommy tried to do was minimize it, try to be like, oh, that's what you've been stressing out about this every single day about for years. I mean, I don't understand. It's not something where you should just say, well, kids will be kids. That crossed a barrier. He didn't. A kids will be kids thing would be, he said, you're ugly or something like that, and he made me cry, or he bullied me. Made me cry. That's something where you just like, not that bullying is minor, but it's something you cross a different line when it's sexual abuse. There's a difference.
Is.
There's a difference. I mean, even if he beat me up, there's a difference between beating somebody up and sexual abuse.
Yep.
It would have been better if he beat me up. Although
he goes at the core of what it means to be us to be a man. It really goes at the core of that particular action. If you don't mind, I want to segue, and I appreciate the candor and the openness to be able to share this, because again, I want a man to see and be impacted in a positive light, to come up on the other side, right? And one of the things that you talked about was all the things that you have been able to overcome, and you mentioned a lot of these things. I want, if you don't mind, speaking on the strength, what gave you that internal drive to go from a person that was told they will never be able to read at 2 years old, go through the situations with the change with your mom, and the inconsistency with the family at that point, to achieve what you have been able to achieve as a lieutenant colonel? Tell us, what was that drive? What is it that took from inside of you to be so driven and achieve so much success?
Well, I am a Christian. I give a lot of value to that. Honestly, and my friends have talked about this with me. One thing that drove me was definitely fear. I mean, honestly, you grow up without money. You don't have a father. You know that you don't have a silver spoon in your mouth. I'm not, and there's people with far worse situations than me. but I knew I didn't have a safety net. So it's like what I have now, I have the pension, and it's like, that's my safety net. I have that income. I don't have to do anything more for the rest of my life if I don't want to. And some people have that their whole life. There are not very many people who have that, but the ones who have it, you will notice, have a different outlook on life. They often are able to achieve more.
Yeah.
In a positive sense, they're able to achieve more because they know, if I screw up on this business, I'm still going to be able to eat. I'm still going to have a house. I can make one phone call and get money, even though it might be embarrassing. And so what made me do it was fear. It was hard work. I would tell people to never give up. I would say, listen to people, but don't listen too much. Something I found on my book, and I can explain exactly why. One of my bucket list goals was writing this novel. And because I believe I'm on the spectrum for autism, and I do want to get tested, I very much believe it. I'm a person who does things in stages. And I was here studying in Peru Spanish for 1 year before my mother got sick and died. And now I've returned on a retirement visa. But I was down here, and I told one of my teachers, I want to get fluent in Spanish. I want to get fluent in French. I want to get my doctorate, and then I want to write a book. And he said, is your book about your doctorate? And I said, no. And he said, is it about French or Spanish? And I said, no. And he said, then why can't you start your book now? And he was right. And I started it. I had another teacher, a Spanish teacher, who asked me in Spanish, why do you want to learn French? Not that there's anything against French, but I want to learn South America. French is no longer the international language. You can use it in France, some places in Africa.
Yep.
And Belgium, and I think there's not too much more than that, but some islands maybe. But you need to be useful, and you need to be realistic when you come to these things. And by the way, I stumbled into Spanish. There were 3 languages in my high school: Spanish, French, German. I was very good about writing things down in a notebook. I forgot to write down that we had an exam the following week to test if we were going to be taking Spanish, French, or German. The teacher was a native Spanish speaker who also spoke French and German.
Oh, wow.
Miss Herrera, I said, I'm sorry, Miss Herrera, I forgot to study. I didn't write it down. So the kids who were college bound typically took French or German. Spanish was considered not the ideal. It was in the 80s for someone going to university. But then I wound up moving to Texas, and it turned out Spanish was the best. So yeah, so I would tell people, don't listen too much. When I'm doing my novel, I don't know if your audience would know what a beta reader is, but you get editors, but you also get beta readers, and I would encourage them to consider getting paid beta readers, because what happens when you get ones that are not paid, they'll read some of the book and they'll say, I don't want to read anymore. So they'll just stop because they're not getting paid. But a beta reader will read over your book, give it suggestions, and go over it. And then, but you find after a while, I find these people on Fiverr, and I pay them good money, and they start contradicting each other. I'm a person, like I told you, I'm a facts person. Monday, January, blah, 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 2025, 1640. I use military time. And that, if it's a civilian person, I'm using AM and PM. My editor, who before I got beta readers, told me you should make it all AM or PM, even though in reality, a lot of military people like military time. A lot of military people like AM and PM. But, you're going to confuse people. But then I use ChatGPT, and I said, give me an example of authors who, and I can find examples like that. I have a character list in my novel. I had a beta reader tell me that's not necessary. But then I looked up, okay, ChatGPT, show me authors who use that. And there are famous authors who use that. I put footnotes because I'd never written fiction before. I wrote a master's thesis. I put footnotes in my novel. And they said, okay, that's for nonfiction. That's not for fiction. But I found authors who do that. Successful authors. So you don't want to listen to too much of what people say. You want to take advice. It's like I tell my girlfriend, I'll take into consideration, no disrespect, but then I must make the decision.
Yes.
There comes a point where I have to do it because I'm And it's the same way in the military. If you have a brigade battalion commander and you have a platoon leader, company commander down at a much lower level, at some point you have to give them the autonomy. This is supposed to be what makes our military better, is that we don't have to have somebody at higher up controlling everything. We give them the autonomy to make decisions with what
Correct.
they call boots on the ground.
Mhm.
If you're right there, you know better. You should know better than people higher up. You're given certain parameters. And so I would tell them to use that bucket list, because I'm spending, when it's all said and done, about $7,000 publishing this book.
Mm.
Really gone through the worst for it.
Mhm.
I've looked up statistically. The statistics are very much against me earning back the money I have spent to create this book. I'm not
Mhm.
talking about making a profit on this. I'm talking about just getting back what I've invested into it. And that's
Breaking
not
even, yeah.
hours. And I'm probably not going to do that. But I would say go ahead and do it, because
Yeah.
you're not doing it for that reason. I'm going to do an audiobook too. Now, there's a part of me, because the way I grow up, that I want to be productive. So at some
Mhm.
point, I'm going to go back to something that earns money, whether it's an Airbnb, working on Fiverr as a proofreader, editor.
Yeah.
I still have military educational benefits. I want to get my doctorate in. And people are like, well, look at your age. You're going to be in your 60s when you finish your doctorate. What are you going to do with it? And I said, I hadn't thought that out.
Yeah.
That's not the deal. The deal isn't how can I earn money from it when you already have a pension, hopefully. It's
Yeah.
bettering yourself, it's achieving a goal.
Yeah. And that is one of the beautiful things about this is one of the reasons why we connected and we wanted to interview, because it's like that line on the Shawshank Redemption, right? You get busy living or you get busy dying, right? And what you're exemplifying is that internal yearning to wanting to expand, to know more, so you have overcome so much, but now you are creating something new and something that is uniquely yours.
And I've talked to my cousin about that too. And I said, not the things that happened to me, they were not good, but in a way, I think they made me stronger.
Mm. Mm.
And maybe God was preparing me to be strong. Maybe I can help other people
Mhm.
with similar
So,
issues.
absolutely. Now that we're getting to the end of the conversation, and which has been one of the this has been one of the best conversations that I've had with someone, and I've done quite a few interviews now, and this is one of the most natural conversations that we've had in terms of your truthfulness and how you felt and the experiences, but also the passion and the urge for life that you have, which is really palpable, and I love that. So tell us, to share with the audience, how do we find you if they want to connect with you? Where do we get the book? When is the book out? Is it coming out? And how do we connect?
Well, if your show is like the other people that I've been on for podcasts, by the time the podcast come out, the book will probably be out. The book is going to be
Okay.
out in December 2025 or sooner.
Hmm.
But because I'm a little bit ahead of schedule, but I want to say December 2025 because I know I can make that mark. But
Okay.
how they would get in touch with me, I have a website that is Ken Webb 69. 69 is the year I was born. Ken Webb with two B's, KenWebb 69.com. They can also reach me, on Facebook. And I don't know. I guess you publish these. You show I gave you all the social media with
Hmm.
my
Hmm.
thing. So
Yeah.
that would be the primary thing. I have an email that goes to that account. I probably shouldn't give my personal email because I might miss their email to me. I wouldn't mind giving it, but
Yeah.
I
No,
don't want.
and what we'll do is I will put all the information on the description and share that on the description. That
Okay.
way they have access to it. So,
Yeah, I mean,
Ken,
and now if I can help other people, I mean, other people that were abused or other things, I would consider that as something voluntary. Do.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said so much that's been so beautiful, that idea of being unique and following your passion, that idea of working hard, being driven by by goals, by setting standards, by meeting those objectives, and now by expanding and learning and growing. Are any final words that you would like to say to the audience? A final message, a final words of encouragement, and a final word when it comes to what you haven't exemplified is overcoming obstacles to actually come across on the other side in the light. Any final words that you would like to say when it comes to all that?
I would say you only get one chance at life, so grab a whole bunch of it. Don't be satisfied. Don't let somebody else define you or restrict you. You know, you have in the military operations, you get restrictions, things you can or can't do. Don't let someone else say you can't do something because you're too old, or you didn't have the right, you didn't grow up without a father or something like that. Because in my case, looking back, God may have protected me.
Thank you for listening to the ASQ Podcast. Remember to lead your life, shape your culture, begin within. Subscribe now and join the movement.